All right, welcome listeners to our first episode of the Playbook Podcast. And this is our podcast for the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurial Development here at Clark Atlanta University, also known as the Robert H. Bob Bell Center for the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurial Development here at Clark Atlanta, CIAD for short. So if you hear us say CIAD, know that's what we're referring to. What better way to kick off our first podcast, our first episode, with none other than the director of our center, Dr. Bruce Berger. He is the director for the center. He's also a professor here at Clark Atlanta University. And Bruce, welcome. I know we've been talking about this podcast for a while, and I want to make sure that we kick it off with you, my friend, the visionary of this whole center. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are here on campus.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ronald Cetoute. Appreciate it. You've been a tremendous asset for the center the last couple of years. I'm so lucky to have you, and you put together this podcast, and I'm so proud of that. And I think it's going to be great, and we're going to have some great guests and a lot of fun also.
Absolutely.
So yes, terrific. By way of introduction, I am the director of the Center for Innovation Entrepreneurial Development, the Bob Bell Center, and have been here since 2015. When then President Ron Johnson of CAU brought me here from Texas Southern, where we worked together. And my charge at that time was to develop a center and sort of proselytize across campus the whole idea of entrepreneurial thinking. And so over the last now almost 10 years now, that's what it's come to be. It's been a lot bigger than what I thought it would be, and we're going to be even bigger starting in the fall when we move into our new center in our annex next to the T. Cole Science and Research Center. So we've done a lot over the last 10 years, and you've been with me for the last couple of years, so you've seen a lot of growth as well. I think over the last 10 years, my count is somewhere just shy of 10,000 students that we've actually touched.
Nice.
We've had relationships with, we've had them at our events. We've worked with them through all the different things we've done, hackathons and pitch competitions and all kinds of workshops, and we've had Stanford Fellows. We've had our own CIED Fellows, which we continue through these last couple of years through today, and through our partnership with Blackstone, and really with the School of Business where we're housed under Dean Udoka. This center has really taken off. So I'm very proud of it, and we've got a lot more to do. And I know that you've been working hard, and we're both going to be pushing the envelope here soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just, for everybody that's coming in for the first time learning about CEID, I want to go back to the genesis. What did that look like when you first came in on the campus? I know you mentioned the President Johnson at the time wanted to start this center, but what did that look like as far as the atmosphere for entrepreneurship here on CAU's campus? Was that something you all were trying to build? How did this all come about when you came into it? Why did they choose you to charge this initiative and bring it forward to where it is today?
Well, that's an interesting question, multifaceted, and I'm used to your multifaceted questions, so I appreciate that. The only entrepreneurship outreach on the campus was through the business school. There was 2 courses actually at the school, and the courses were mostly predominantly, I would say, for business school students. In fact, a requirement for management students. The entrepreneurship courses and curriculum are housed in the management department in the School of Business. So around campus, there really wasn't any outreach. There really wasn't anything going on with regard to events. However, what I discovered here, and I saw it at the first HBCU I worked at, Texas Southern, which was right before I came here, a tremendous sort of, it wasn't underground exactly, but a tremendous
Mhm.
amount of side hustles, a
Mm.
tremendous amount of students who were doing things, whether it was in fashion or skincare or STEM areas. These students were doing their own thing, making money. Some of them were cooking meals and selling them on the weekends when the
Mhm.
cafeteria wasn't going full blast. And I would get to meet these students through the courses I was teaching, but also in the outreach I was doing. And then I was introduced to the sponsored programs research department in the STEM area. All of the professors in biology, physics, math, chemistry that are doing mostly federal grant work were some of whom were doing a little bit of commercialization. And
Mhm.
that's where I was able to work with as almost a de facto lawyer, because that's my background,
Mhm.
helping out faculty members with SBIR grants and STTR grants and companies that wanted to work with us, and met a lot of folks then. So I knew, going back to your original question, I knew that this was rich, this was fertile from the standpoint of entrepreneurial activity. So
Mhm.
my job was really to take what was a kind of an infrastructure that was not very formal, an informal infrastructure, and try to formalize it and try to get faculty involved, get staff involved, get the administration involved, and certainly our students and our alums. So that's kind of what we did in the very beginning. But I had a good head start with what was already here going on a very informal basis.
Okay, okay. Now we know that leads me to one thing as far as when it comes to entrepreneurship on college campuses, um, it's still something that's relatively new as a discipline, still a developing discipline. When you look at HBCUs, why is that so important for not just Clark, but HBCUs in general to really be looking at bringing entrepreneurship and innovation into the academics or just having a presence on campus?
Well, I think first of all, in the PWI arena, entrepreneurship is new, not just in HBCU world, but it's fairly new. I mean,
Mhm.
although I graduated 50 years ago from Wharton, the word entrepreneurship was never ever uttered at the Wharton School, one of the best business schools in the world. Never uttered. Today, there's a ton of entrepreneurial activity and curricula going on at Wharton, and I would say virtually most throughout the PWI world.
Mhm.
HBCUs have caught on, and I would say over the last 10 to 15 years, entrepreneurship centers started to spring up. Out of 100 HBCUs, not counting just grad schools like Morehouse Medical and law schools, but the undergrad HBCUs, about 100 of them, there's only about 35 schools that have actual dedicated centers. Now,
Mhm.
I'd say probably 50 to 60 out of those 100 schools, maybe even more. I don't know. I don't have a firm count. I did a study on the centers are teaching entrepreneurship in their business schools.
Mhm.
So we're moving in that direction, but we've got some catching up to do. But I will tell you, uh, the most important thing, and sort of one of the reasons that I'm at an HBCU, is that generating generational wealth in the Black community is so very critical. And what better way to do that than through entrepreneurship? You go back to
Mhm.
the first Black billionaire, Reggie Lewis, some
Mhm.
of the great CEOs, fellas and women who, are in the multimillionaire category and the billionaire category now who are Black. That's starting to take, root and to take notice.
Yeah.
So taking our students to the next level and getting them to understand that there's people who look like them and people who have achieved, they can do it and
Yeah.
don't have to come from wealth to build generational wealth. They just need the tools, and they don't have the tools. And unfortunately, even in our business schools, we don't teach a lot of the things that we should teach because of traditional entrepreneurial education. It's a lot different
Yeah.
than some of the things you and I have been doing, and some of the things that we've learned that our brothers and sisters in the Blackstone Network, 60 schools around the country, are doing. And so that's really where it's at. The experiential learning is the key for our students.
Right, right. And the beautiful thing about that, I think, is um, when you have those who are experienced in the field, somehow bringing them into the fold, into the institutions and accommodating them and actually putting that on top of their formal education that really compounds what they're doing as far as their academics and what they're, how they're applying that in the real world. And I know you're an entrepreneur yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, because while you're a professor, you're also an entrepreneur. You have multiple businesses as well, and you're also an attorney, right? So tell us a little bit about that, about your background and that journey real briefly.
Yeah, I've always been entrepreneurial, ever since I did paper routes as a kid, and got into college and had a couple little side hustles with some other folks in college, and I kind of went off that path and went to an MBA, and then I went to law school and sort of went down a different path, which was criminal law. I was a prosecutor. And once I left the prosecutor's office down in Florida where I practiced, I then went into civil practice and did a lot of civil litigation. All along that way, in all of my free time, I was investing, I was learning, I was
Mhm.
developing skills in areas that were building wealth for me. I learned how to trade actually through a professor at Wharton, who I went back to visit and then had a phone connection with every weekend. And he taught me how to trade. At that time, we were trading commodities and a little bit of equities. But, that's when I started to really think about how can I build wealth with the money I was making, which really wasn't much in the beginning of my law career. Um, and I started investing in businesses, and I would buy different types of businesses when I would meet people and hear about things. And then I would go to meetings and I'd go to entrepreneurial events, and then became a real estate investor and got heavy into the real estate investing world. So I just kept trying to learn as much as I could about investing in the stock market, investing in the bond market, investing in annuities, different things that interested me that I wanted to learn about as I started to make more money in private practice. And I was single. I didn't get married till I was 43, actually. So I had a pretty good income once I got out of the public sector. And with that money, I started to figure out how will I start to build this wealth. And that's included many businesses which I started or I partnered with, 11 total. And we have three left now. My wife and I, we have three businesses left now out of those 11. And I had some really good exits and I had some not so good exits. The life of an entrepreneur, practicing
Yeah.
law and doing it part-time, which became about 30 to 40 hours a week on top of my law practice, became quite challenging. And
Mm.
when I got to the point financially where I didn't have to have a job anymore, where I was independent financially and I could make a change and go into a different career I was basically just doing my investing as I was taking my practice down, and that took several years. But in the meantime, I always taught. I taught in actually police academies as a prosecutor, and I taught in some community colleges where they needed criminal justice professors, and I always enjoyed that. So for real, I started teaching at Western Carolina University because we had moved from Florida up to the mountains of North Carolina in Asheville, and I had a friend who was chair of the department of the business law department. So I started teaching business law. And then I was able to get into the entrepreneurship department as well and teach there as an adjunct in that department. And then I was full-time faculty. And then I went out to, I also taught at Clemson. And then I went out to, through a friend there, to Texas Southern with Dr. Johnson, who was my dean of the business school at Western Carolina University, part of the UNC system. So we went to Texas Southern, which was the first HBCU I had been at. He had been at Florida A&M many years ago in their business school. So that's kind of how I got through him to CAU, as I mentioned before.
Okay. So does that transfer into your classes? You know, your skill set, do you bring that all of that experience that you have into your classes for the students? Do they do you include that into somehow build that into the curriculum so they can kind of get that though it's not direct experiential learning or understand the concepts?
Yeah, well, two things about me. When I really got into academics around 1998, 99, 2000, I went out to Stanford and I took some courses in the business model canvas, lean startup, which was just taking off at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, there's two ways I want to teach. One is through projects or experiencing real world activities. And the second is to give them my experiences. I think one of the problems we have in academia is we have professors who have had very short or very narrow career paths before they became professors.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them never have had career paths and went from undergrad to master's to PhD and then to teaching. So they've never really been in the real world. So I really do require in my classes that students do real world work, but also I'm there in my law classes and in my entrepreneurship classes to tell them how this really works. Because you're not going to learn that in a textbook. In fact, in my entrepreneurship class, I don't use a textbook. I reject it. It's all project based.
Yeah.
And even in my law classes, I'm telling war stories constantly so they can understand, how these legal concepts are really work and what really happens in a courtroom.
Right, right. No, I think that's very interesting you say that because it reminds me of when I was in undergrad, I switched my major to criminal justice, and I've always remembered my favorite professor, and I could probably say most of the students. One of our favorite professors was this gentleman who actually worked in the FBI, and that was mainly because he was able to relate a lot of his experience to what we were supposed to be learning in the textbook, but he could also tell us like, theoretically, this sounds like it makes sense, but let me tell you how it really happens or how it really goes down. And I think that was one of the things that really made things interesting for us, or how we really learned, because we were able to tie this into the real world versus I remember one of my other professors who she was just pure academic, teaching criminal justice, but she had never uh, worked in the field. I think she got her degree in sociology, then criminal justice, and then, but everything was textbook based. So it was just, it
Yeah.
wasn't really a fun class because we really didn't know what we were doing. So I think that was, I agree with you to the extent that it's very important that even in academia, we learn how to bring the real world into the classroom, because if not, I don't know that it really completes the education. I'll say it that way.
Yeah. Now, and you went on to an early career in law enforcement,
I did. I did.
as I recall. So you got jacked up by that FBI agent.
Yep. So I want to go ahead and switch into real quick the some of the programs that we offer here at CIED, and even some of the stuff that we've done before I even got here. Some of the programs that you have done in the past when you first got here, and what are some of the things that we're doing right now when it comes to some of the programs and the impact that we're having with the students here on campus. What does that look like for the center and for the students?
Well, we started off with trying to get students involved in entrepreneurship outside of the classroom by having pitch competitions and explaining what pitch competitions were, and then doing some kind of free-for-all pitch competitions called hackathons. And so we did a lot of that. And that had nothing to do with my classes that I was teaching. And we were trying to do thematic things. You know, we would have a
Mm-hmm.
theme around something, we would have a sponsor, and the sponsor would want to know, how do young minds think about our business? So
Mm-hmm.
we did a lot of that, right up into COVID. And we had a lot of workshops also. We would bring in speakers, we would have panels, we would get into not only entrepreneurship, but the community focused economic inclusion. We had a grant. I was lucky enough to be involved as the PI in a grant called Create, which had many partners, including the Russell Center, CAU, Truly Living Well, which is an urban farm. And we developed about 55, 56 entrepreneurs from scratch in
Mm.
Southwest Atlanta around food, food distribution, drinks, health products. We had one woman, and she's still in business today, and she was doing crickets, eating, making cricket meal, and
Oh, wow.
very high protein. Yeah, yeah. We had just tremendous Black entrepreneurs in the community. These were not students. We would use our students to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have students working with these entrepreneurs in voluntary capacities. We also developed a program here, which I brought from Texas Southern, which was a program where we would embed students with entrepreneurs, profit and nonprofit, and businesses, and even some governmental agencies. We would embed students to do some consulting work to solve challenges that these companies, these entrepreneurs had. And that was very popular and became a course. But we used our students through the center. And I would have alumni and just people in the community who I would be connecting with. Um, and we would connect up students, not as interns, not in an internship program, but to actually solve a problem, to do research.
Nice.
Maybe it was marketing research, maybe it was some kind of customer discovery, maybe it was some kind of accounting, QuickBooks, how to set up QuickBooks, different things that folks needed. So, we've developed that into a course actually called the Entrepreneurial Practicum. And so, we've had fellows from out in Stanford. That program is a tremendous program where we would bring students out there, and that program teaches students how to engage other students and faculty across the campus in entrepreneurial activities. So we did a lot of that, proselytizing entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking. And then, COVID kind of shut us down.
Mhm.
We lost some budgets and we were shut down for about 2 years almost. And then we came back and lucky enough to get Blackstone to support us with a $500,000 grant. And we've been working on that. And I was able to bring you on board 2 years ago. You're in your third year now. And
Yes, sir.
so, I'm blessed because your energy, your connections through the community, your involvement with the Haitian Chamber of Commerce, and all of the connections that you have, and we have things in common. You're an Airbnb owner. I'm an Airbnb owner. You're an investor in real estate, as am I. And we've owned small businesses. So these are things we're bringing to our students. Right now, we're doing things I think that are groundbreaking. You won't, I would dare to say you won't find this, what we're doing now, you and I, in any schools around the
Mm.
country. And Ron, we need to write a paper on this and put it in the the Harvard Business Review.
Let's do
Um,
it. Let's do it.
yeah, we need to do that because we're doing things that just aren't done.
Mhm.
First of all, we're flipping houses with students, and students are putting money into a flip, and they're
Yeah.
learning how to flip a house. Why are we doing that? We have so many students who bang down our door. They bang down our door. We want to get involved in real estate. We want to get our real estate license, and we want to we want to own apartment buildings. We want to own houses. The level of entrepreneurial DNA in our students at this HBCU, and many, is through the roof. So when they
Mm.
bang down our door, we have to respond. And you and I, having done this, we said, okay, we know people in the community, let's teach them how to flip a house. So we're flipping a house for real.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
each student's putting $100 in. They know it's a risk. It may not happen. But if it does happen, they'll get their 100 back and they'll make some money. We for the first time, groundbreaking, we're doing a small group, sort of a beta test, teaching students how to trade, but trade with low risk in a
Mm.
trading room. So they're actually in, a friend of mine in a trading room that I've been involved in. And they're working with him and they're taking a course and they're going to learn for about 3 months. Then they're going to paper trade for 3 months. And after 6 months, then they're going to be able to trade their own money, $750. They had to open up an account and it just sits
Yeah.
there. But they're going to learn how to trade low risk things like credit spreads and debit spreads. These are low risk day trading.
Yeah.
Instead of putting, $750 in Tesla or GameStop or some of these meme stocks. Tesla's not a meme stock. And then, it goes down 19 points in 1 hour and they've lost their 750. We're not doing that. So we're teaching students how they can accumulate wealth with very little money. Okay.
Mhm.
These are groundbreaking. These are not done in academia. We're not doing them in a course. We're not doing them, in a business school. We're doing them, as an entrepreneurship innovation. We're an innovation and entrepreneurship center, so we should be doing this kind of stuff, getting out of our comfort zones. So that's two great examples of things, and we have students coming to us all the time wanting to do things, and if it's something we can do, we'll support it. We just started an esports team and we're
Mhm. Mhm.
supporting a coach and we're supporting a team. We've got about 20 students on this team and they're going to get competitive. And that's also going to bring us to recruit high school students because we're making relationships with high schools through a connection you have and you have had through as a staff member of the university who has a son in high school.
Mhm.
So, we took that connection, made it to our advantage. That will blow into gaming, gamification. That whole industry is starving for Black talent, and that whole industry needs to come to the HBCUs and feel comfortable. We had a convening last spring, gaming, gamification, esports convening, very well attended.
Mm-hmm.
We've done things around NASA. We've done things around inclusive competitiveness over the years with national folks. Jonathan Hollifield, who was the White House initiative on the HBCUs president. Trump actually first term had Jonathan in the White House, and Jonathan came here. He had written a book on inclusive competitiveness, and we had a whole day, day and a half convening around that. So
Mm-hmm.
we're open. And if someone came to me tomorrow and said, "Oh, well, would you consider doing this?" If it made sense, we would do this. I'm getting ideas all the time about different things. NIL is big now.
Yeah.
We have the PNC folks on campus. The regional center is here. They're doing something with NIL. We're supporting that.
Mm-hmm.
So that can explode as well. So that's
Absolutely.
just some of the things we're doing.
I mean, it's a lot, and it's exciting to be honest with you. And I'm honored to be able to, play that game with you in terms of bringing this to the students. When I look back on my education and while I was in college, some of the things that I wish, and I told this student the other day because they were asking me when my first PhD program, I actually dropped out. I don't know if I told you that, but my first PhD program I dropped out because I wanted to um, explore business a little bit more, and at the time I just couldn't find a way to bring the two together, and I just didn't know in my mind that me being in college or being entrepreneurial as a PhD student or in general in school was a thing. And mainly because at the time there was just the idea that, if you're in school, you're either going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to or you're gonna go get a job. There was an opportunity for both worlds to come together. At least that's what was being pushed out, and there was a lot of drop out of school. Bill Gates dropped out. Everybody else dropped out, and so my mind was very one side. I was split, and I couldn't make up my mind, so I dropped out. And now that I get to come back here and work here at Clark, I think the beautiful thing that these students now have is that there is an entrepreneurship center and a space for them to explore without having to feel like they have to choose between one or the other. Because in reality, all of it's connected at some point. And you can use one to support the other. Or even if you're a criminal justice major or, art and fashion design student, it doesn't mean you have to go get a job right after. And even if you do, that's fine. Come to our center, learn how to be entrepreneurial, learn how to be more creative with your thinking, learn how to be more solution oriented. I think that's one of the benefits that a lot of students have today with the centers is that they don't have to struggle and think that these things are two different areas that they have to go into or career paths. So I think this excited as far as what we're doing. That's why I'm excited as far as what we're doing because, I wish, somebody would have been, putting a real estate program together while I was in college
Yeah.
versus
Yep.
me thinking building wealth has to be something different from my job or that I can't use my job to actually support, my wealth building. So these things I think that we're doing is very important for the students, as you mentioned, because um, there is the idea that I either have to focus on school and not worry about wealth building at all. In the meantime, I'll do that once I start making money, a lot of money. So I like your approach to things because it forces students to think about this very early, which I think is very important. What advice would you give to CAU students, faculty, staff, alumni, who actually want to start their own venture?
Well, I think the number one thing is to do it. When you contemplate it and contemplate it, and then procrastinate about it, you're never going to do it. So I think if you have an idea, my number one advice is come see you and me. We have consulting hours and talk to us and say, this is an idea. How do I get traction? Because most people, Black white, green, yellow, it doesn't really matter. They don't know how to get traction as an entrepreneur. They make a lot of mistakes. They waste a lot of money. They do things that are, probably counterproductive. So we can at least get them in the right direction. And based on our past experiences and people we know and our connections, we have a seminar, we have a workshop tonight about how to secure the bag, quote unquote, how to uh, get a
Raise money.
strategy, get a strategy for money if you are an entrepreneur or have an idea. That's the number one tripping point for women and minorities, Black and brown folks, that keeps them back from being successful. A Bill Gates, Adele, they can drop out. They got rich parents. They're upper middle class kids. They've got friends. They've got uncles, rich uncles, and they can make it. And if they don't make it, they're not on the streets. Okay. Many of our students, if they don't make it, they're on the streets. So we can't afford that. So we have got to, give them a pathway. And that's all, I really want our students to understand, our staff, our faculty even. If you want to do something and you've got that urge in you, come talk to us and, we can help chart a path, and you'll feel confident, you'll feel better, and you'll be able to move on it. We'll give you milestones. And if you don't do them, then we're going to, be upset with you. We'll push you. We'll push you.
Good. So I know we're coming up on time, and so many things. I know we can talk for hours because there's so many questions that I want to ask you, of course, to continue the conversation. But we'll probably bring you back for another episode, most likely. But we will, because there's some other things I want to touch on when it comes to higher education and entrepreneurship, and what that looks like for faculty, staff, and other entrepreneurship centers, and students in general. But what do you want to leave faculty, alumni, staff with, anybody who's watching this, and even some of our community partners, some of our sponsors? What do you want to leave with them as far as what the center is up to, how to engage with us, and if they want to get involved with us, how they should go about doing that?
Well, contacting us is the best way, and I'm sure you're going to be able to put it out there as far as all of our contact information. But contacting us and coming in and just saying, "Hey, we have an idea, or we have a business, and it's been dormant, or we need to pivot. What would you suggest?" Just coming into the center through an email, through a text, through physically coming onto campus. We have a lot of folks in Atlanta who don't know what we're doing, and we've got to get the word out there. We've have many opportunities to talk to folks, but we've got to do more. So my word is, come see us, come talk to us, and see if a light bulb can be turned on, because that's what we're all about doing, turning on light bulbs in people's heads, including ours.
Absolutely. We might have too many light bulbs, but it's a good thing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Cetoute. Ron, I appreciate it very much. This is great. I'm glad you're off and running on this, this podcasting. That's exciting. We use social media a lot, and our students love it. And so this is fantastic. I want to wish you all the best and all the best of luck in the podcasting, and I'm excited to watch them.
All right, and thank you for being on the first episode. We're going to make a big deal out of it, and of course, there'll be many more. And trust me, you'll be back. You'll be invited back to have another conversation on the podcast. So appreciate you, Dr. Berger.
Appreciate it, Ron. Thank you so much. You take care.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.